Well, hello, my friends. We meet again. It has been a while. Where should we begin? Today, I'm doing my best six-string TV impersonation with the sunglasses here. And today, we are talking about power prog. Power prog is one of my favorite metal subgenres, from the soaring vocal hooks to chugging rhythms to intricate and intertwining melodies and unusual instrumental sections. Power prog just hits all the right notes for me, and I absolutely love it. And honestly, I think it's one of metal's best subgenres that gets consistently slept on. So today I'm going to talk about some of the best bands and my favorite albums that I love here. And as you can see in the title, you know, no slander towards Dream Theater at all here. I just think that their albums have been talked about to death on this website, so I wanted to highlight some other more unknown bands. Also, there's no Symphony X here. You know, sorry to disappoint. We all know Damnation Game is a masterpiece. And, you know, for that matter as well, Operation Mindcrime isn't on here either, so we don't need to discuss it any further. Thus, let us start here. Up first, we have the monolithic Seventh Wonder and their absolutely amazing concept album, Mercy Falls. The whole album revolves around a man in a coma and his family dealing with the aftermath of the car accident which put him in said coma. The story that the band tells is very, very emotional and hits at some very deep personal moments for me, especially on the song One Last Goodbye, which I am sure if you've ever been around those final moments in a loved one's life, you will also feel what I felt as well. Don't want you to go. Is there no other way? Now, on the album, it's not perfect, right? The voice acting is pretty terrible, but in all honesty, you know, it really only makes me love the album more. I just feel it's very human, you know. Perfection does not really exist, and the voice acting is a very small part of the album anyways, and I sort of just chalk it off to Swedes trying to imitate an American accent. But really, the star of the show here is singer Tommy Karavik. His singing is just exquisite. His voice has such a pleasing and soothing timbre to it. He effortlessly glides around notes and gives an extremely dynamic performance, especially on the previously mentioned track One Last Goodbye, as well as Tears for Her Father. I won't cry, no I won't, I'll be strong. Good night, Dad. But the album is more than just a Tommy singing masterclass. The bass playing is amazing, the riffs are excellent, the drumming is absolutely rock solid, and the keyboard playing is extremely tasteful and only adds to the music. The chuggy, sort of syncopated rhythms glue the album together, and that oh-so-sweet motif that they come back to multiple times throughout the album is just an absolute masterclass in concept album songwriting. There's even a full live performance of the entire album that the band did at Prog Power USA, which you can go watch. Really, it's one of my favorite albums and bands of all time. I could go on and on about it. It's just so slipped on. So if you were going to check out a song from this album, I'd highly go with the mighty Unbreakable. It contains basically all the elements which make the album great. I also really like the softer tracks like Tears for Her Father and Tears for Her Son. Check it out. Let the shadow break the unbreakable. Alright, next up we have another album which I've mentioned several times before on this channel actually, and that is Royal Hunt's Paradox. Neoclassical progressive masterpiece. Royal Hunt's Paradox is extremely well written, catchy, and memorable. Full of dynamics, the album's main motto, I guess you would say, would be balance. No one element really outshines the others, and they really all work in tandem to create this wonderful work of art. We don't see any minute-long solos or needlessly indulgent passages or crazy vocal runs. The album is song-centric, right? It's the songs, not the individual players, which is the main focus. But despite this balance, there are a few standouts, namely the singer D.C. Cooper, who really shines here, giving us a very theatrical and convincing performance. I especially love the glam metal influence on the choruses on this album, with the sort of big gang vocals making the catchy choruses that much catchier and just makes you want to sing along with it. You know, the album is sort of similar to Mercy Falls in that it contains a lot of varied and acoustic sections. It's a long way on. piano-only sections, grand neoclassical keyboard intros, intense prog riffing, and soaring guitar leads, all combined with very snappy songwriting under a broad theme of the great paradoxes of religion. Fantastic album, and if there was one song for you to check out in here, that would be Silent Scream. Now, keeping with the 90s Euro power prog, we have the Dutch band Elegy and their fantastic album Manifestations of Fear. This album initially stood out to me for its very, very snappy and sharp production. I think the album, especially the drums, sounds absolutely fantastic from a production point of view. And of course, the fantastic musicianship is elevated by this, right? The guitars are very chunky, the bass, it all just fits so well together. I love it. Guitarist Henk van der Lars does an absolutely fantastic job with the riffage here, especially on tracks like Frenzy and the title song. This is another conceptual album, that makes 3 in a row here now. It tells the story of a child born into grinding poverty and how he grows up in this dreadful world. This is all told through the excellent voice of singer Ian Perry, whose voice has a lot of that Dio kind of grit and power, which makes the lyrics that he sings that much more powerful. This is especially evident on the softer tracks like Angel Without Wings and The Forgotten. Just a really fantastic melodic power prog album that is matched with really, really great production and some chunky riffs and great songwriting. Check out the song I mentioned earlier, Angel Without Wings, for a good summation of what the album has to offer. Staying in Europe, we have France's Alchemist and their 2003 album, A Meeting in the Mist. This album, despite coming out in 2003, has a decidedly old school feel to it, although I guess it's 22 years old now. Ugh. But maybe that has to do with the somewhat dry drum production. But regardless, I love the vibe and the atmosphere that it presents to us. It really sounds like what the album cover is showing. It sounds like this sort of starry sky, whatever is going on the cover here. It's really cool. And most importantly, the album is just filled to the brim with absolutely banging riffs. Riffs always win, and these riffs are matched with equally impressive and very chunky bass lines. Check out the riffing on the song Still Alive. Yet the guitar playing is not the only star here. To me, it really falls on the singing. Utterly fantastic singing, which gives this album a really, really grand feel to it, especially when the band builds up to some of these majestic choruses over the course of an entire, 6 or 7 minute song. Sort of climaxes very well. They do a great job at that. They even have a quasi-breakdown section in the 12-minute epic, which ends the song, which is called Nameless Son. Which would be the song I recommend to check out if you are interested in this album here. Insanely underrated band and a very, very underappreciated album. Great stuff. Now, before we continue on though, I just want to give a special shout out to the band Theocracy. Now, I didn't really include them here as I found them to be much more power metal than prog metal, but they have a few very progressive songs, namely the amazing 11-minute masterpiece of I Am, as well as the over 22-minute epic Mirror of Souls. Check out both of these songs if you're interested in some power prog, which is much more power than prog. Oh yeah, and while you're at it, why don't you hit like and subscribe too if you like this sort of content. You don't really see many other people talking about power prog here on the internet, so yeah, hit the like for that if you'd like that stuff. Okay, so now we have the Italian band Labyrinth, and this time we are showcasing 2 albums here. Return to Heaven Denied, series, you know, Return to Heaven Denied Part 1 and Part 2. And despite these albums being released 12 years apart, they firmly feel like they are part of the same story. Both albums feature great guitar work with soaring leads and really memorable melodies and riffs, which when combined with the really emotive and expressive vocals of singer Roberto Tiranti, he really shines on both these albums with his masterclass on power metal singing, especially on the end of The Shooting Star where he goes from the bottom of his range right to the very top. I love that part, it's sick. And really, this is just top tier Euro power prog. I love it. Just utterly fantastic, solid music. Love it. Check out Lady Lost in Time from the first album and The Shooting Star from the second one. Alright, so finally moving on from European power prog, and now we head across the sea to Florida and the band Control Denied with their one and only album, The Fragile Art of Existence. Now, regular viewers of this channel know that I am one of the biggest death glazers in the game, so it's no surprise that I also love Chuck Schuldiner's other band, Control Denied. Essentially, what we have here is death riffs, song structures, you know, typical melodies and stuff, combined with the extremely unique singing from Tim Aramar. The vocals from Tim are probably the most argued about element of this album, but I think that's more from death fans who are listening to Control Denied because of the death connection. But if you were coming from the power prog angle, I actually think Tim's vocals are really great. They're very unique in structure and in the melodies, no doubt because Chuck Schuldiner wrote most of the vocal melodies here. But I mean, really, the instrumentation is where this album really shines. And when you have Chuck Schuldiner, Steve DiGiorgio, and Richard Christie, I mean, what else do you expect, right? All three of these guys are absolutely amazing musicians. The riffs are amazing, bass is always interesting and meandering, and Richard's drumming is more subdued than on The Sound of Perseverance, but is still very tasteful with the odd flourish of that Richard Christie insanity. But yeah, highly recommend checking out this stuff. Even if you don't like death at all, if you just more like power prog, you probably will like this. So check out the song Breaking the Broken to get a good idea of what this album has to offer.
I saw you, you saw me, you hit your back so well. I should have.
Now, moving down to the southern hemisphere, we have the
Australian
power prog group Voyager, who bring an interesting element of djent and even a little bit of synthwave to the mix here. Now, I am sure that when I said djent, more than half of you watching rolled your eyes and moved to skip a few minutes ahead in the video. But, you know, let me just stop you right there. The djent elements in this album are extremely tasteful and do not overshadow the great power prog, which underpins the whole thing. You know, it's not like this is Tesseract or Periphery, right? There's just like, you know, a little dash of djent on top of the thing, right? Vocalist Daniel Estrin has a very unique voice. He's a baritone, which you don't normally hear in power prog. Yet he does a fantastic job of singing some very memorable and catchy lines. He also plays the keys in this album, and the keys really do a wonderful job filling with some fantastic atmosphere. And the guitar work is where we get some of the more low-tuned djent influence here, which, as I said before, is very tastefully done. Check out the song Morning Light to get a good overview of what this album offers. Now we go directly north up to Japan, where we have the band X Japan. Now, normally I wouldn't really consider X Japan a power prog band like at all. You know, they fit more into that eclectic Japanese glam thrash sound that we just called Visual K. But here on Art of Life, which is a one-song album that graced us with some of the finest, most beautiful, and moving pieces of music, never mind power prog, ever put onto CD. You know, the album, like I said, is just one song. All about, well, the art of life, right? You know, life and death, tragedy and triumph, despair and elation, and everything in between. A very, very ambitious work of art which transcends cultural barriers here, which also just happens to be some of the best power prog riffs and melodies ever written. You know, in addition to the beautiful melodies, the beautiful riffs, and the long song structure that creates this thing, the singing is really enjoyable and fantastic. Despite the heavy Japanese accent, the words, emotions, and meaning is very, very clear and presented in a very dynamic way by singer Toshi. He does a great job here. But I think the real standout here is the drumming and piano playing of Yoshiki. The near 8-minute long piano solo is the true masterpiece of storytelling through sound vibration. Goosebumps every time. You know, I can't recommend this one enough. And honestly, this is the one time where I actually think the live version is better than the studio version. You know, just go check this out. You know, 20 minutes of your life. You'll enjoy it. Just absolutely beautiful, man. I can't talk it up enough here. I'm losing the ability to find words to describe it. Anyways, another Japanese power prog band is Gallen Arias, and especially their 2012 album Angel of Salvation. Now, Gallen Arias is one of my all-time favorite power metal bands. I just love the unabashed, shameless cheese and bombacity of their music. Yet here on Angel of Salvation, they take a little bit more of a neoclassical and a tasteful touch to it. And, you know, as well as just a little bit more progressive than some of their other stuff. Now, this whole band really revolves around the virtuosity of guitarist Sue, whose fingers blaze across the fretboard and bless us some of the most beautiful and soaring melodies and leads ever put onto tape, especially on the 14-minute title track, which sees Sue give us a very fantastic rendition of a Tchaikovsky violin concerto. Probably said that wrong. I'm sorry, Russians. But the powerful and soaring singing of vocalist Sho, who before joining the band was a pop singer, I believe. And like you can tell, his vocals are almost perfection in musical form. Insanely catchy and melodic power prog. Amazing stuff. It's just blazing fast. I love it. Check out the song, The Promised Flag. Alright, so now we have Evergrey and their 2001 album, In Search of Truth. Here we get the usual power prog sound with a little bit of smattering of gothic metal, yet still remains very, very riff focused and not too much getting into the weeds of, you know, that gothic metal atmosphere, I guess you could say, right? It's just a little bit, like a little dash. Here we have another concept album, yet this time it is revolving around the unique concept of alien abduction. And despite this theme, they managed to not make it cheesy or gimmicky. Instead, it's very sincere and genuine and emotional. No doubt thanks to both the excellent atmosphere that the band creates here, as well as the hard-carrying vocals of Tim England. His vocals are just absolutely sublime here, just enough grit and attack on them to retain an edge to the sound, which when combined with the riffage and excellent drumming creates a very, very compelling and enjoyable album from start to finish. Great dynamics, interesting instrumentation, pretty heavy riffs at times. I love the double bass that they throw in here all the time, and honestly just fantastic keyboard playing, and the strange and unique concept that the album presents to us is just icing on the cake. Check out the song Dark Waters to get a good gestalt of the album. So, what albums would you also include on this list? I've been Varvis. Cheers.